It's time for the chip race.
Your wife, Catherine, seems to travel with you quite a lot and has been on hand for a few of those honey, he called me with ace jack offsuit moments. How important is she to your success, and how does she feel about poker and your outbursts?
First of all, we call her Cat. And second of all, she'd probably be pretty cross if she thought we were even talking about her.
Okay.
I mean, she hates the press. I love the press. She hates the press. You want to give me the cover of Sports Illustrated? Love it. Cover of Time Magazine? Love it. Fun stuff. I'll take it. My wife, she just runs away from it, hates being there. But she's been extraordinarily important to me as my growth, as far as my growth as a human being goes. And then when you grow as a human being, your poker skills also grow. And that I can tell you absolutely is the case. So my wife being a therapist, being a psychiatrist, okay, and I'm holding my hands up. I always do this to illustrate the primary relationship. So your primary relationship is the most important relationship in your life. And so it's always your spouse, right? And so my wife has challenged me. She met an insecure, egotistical, great poker player, loyal as can be, never cheated on my wife. And so a lot of really good there, but man, did she have to deal with a lot, when we first got married. I mean, I don't think, I'm surprised she made it with me because I was that hard. And then, when I would have bad times, and when she was talking about leaving me in 2001, 2000, whatever it was, I went crazy. I started crying. To me, my wife looked perfect. She was beautiful, black belt in karate, doctor at a major university, and she just looked amazing to me, and she had the right temperament for someone like me. And I just went crazy. And what happened was she said, well, I'm not going to leave you yet. Let's go into therapy. We'll probably end up split up, but at least let's see if you can improve a little bit. She's like, the typical thing that happens. It happens to most couples where, they get married early, where they say where the woman says to the guy, what in the hell? You haven't grown at all. I was expecting, I married a diamond in the rough. You're still a diamond in the rough 7-8 years later. And so I think she made me into a better man because I was in so much pain. It was so traumatic for me that we went to therapy together, and I listened to everything she said, recognized all of my faults, and started improving them one at a time. And when you're in a lot of pain, you change a lot more quickly. If everything's perfect, you're never going to change. But when you're in pain, you change quickly. And so the end of that process, a year and a half of intense therapy for her and I had come from here as a human being to here. Well, when you make that much of a change in your life and your relationships, it translates well to poker. And so I started also winning a bunch of tournaments. And, I just saw myself more clearly. I saw the world more clearly. I saw the relationships with all of my friends more clearly. And I remember John Benetti, my best friend at the time, crying because he's like, that's the first time you've ever listened to me in 10 years. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? I was driving. I'm like, wow, Benetti's 70-year-old Italian guy. He never cries. And I'm like, all right, what's going on here? And I realized it dawned on me, yes, Kathy had made me into a better man, and it was translating to all of my other relationships. And then, and so we've done therapy ever since. I missed it. We stopped after a year and a half, and I'm like, I don't want to stop growing. I need this growth. And so she has made me grow. We were in therapy yesterday, and we're going to be back in 2 days, an hour and a half sessions. And, and I'm challenging her to change a few things right now. And she's really kind of grasping it and moving forward. And so this relationship, and you can't come to someone outside. I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you've had girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. And so if you tell that your primary relationship person there's something wrong with you, that's not going to work. You go, what the hell? There's something wrong with you. But when you go into therapy with the intention of changing, with the intention of recognizing your weaknesses, with the intention of becoming better, It's very powerful. And so I wouldn't recommend that people do that outside of therapy, but couples therapy is amazing. And we've been doing it really since 99, 2000, whenever it was. And so we still do it and we still grow from it. So you asked me how my wife has changed me. She's made me into a better man, and I've made her into a better woman as we both continue to try to tackle issues in our relationship and become better. And as I become better and better and better and better and better, as in my relationships and trying to be the perfect man, it's just led to a lot more poker success as well.
Well, Phil, first of all, thank you so much for your honesty there. I think there's so many poker players out there who probably go through similar stuff, whether it's issues with parents maybe frowning upon what they do. As you say, the father with PhDs and he's in a quote-unquote respectable job, and they probably struggle with that stuff. And to hear it from someone of your stature, I think that it means an awful lot. Also, obviously, people have difficulties in their personal relationships too. And again, to hear you speak so frankly on that is so refreshing and probably a little unexpected, I think, too, for people. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
That's important stuff to share, and the reason that I share is because it does inspire people that are listening. So the viewers of this podcast are having similar issues, have similar issues, will have similar issues, and to know that that someone that they recognize, someone that probably they have some respect for, and maybe a lot more respect after hearing this. When I'm delivering, I feel like sharing with them is going to just help them. And so, yeah, I'm really into inspiring, and that's why. And I realize, so yes, thank you. That's good. I like to be open because I think it helps other people.
Absolutely. Well, to switch gears a little bit, lastability in poker is something Darren and I often talk about. Stars have risen, shone brightly, and burnt out in the blink of an eye. I remember you often saying, I think you might have said it to Durr at one point, let's see if he's still around in a few years' time. You said that often when describing breakout players who got a lot of attention. And your words have actually ended up being quite prophetic at times. You recently had words about and with arguably today's best player, Fedor Holz. How do you rate him, and do you think if he wanted, he could stay at the top, unlike some of those previous bright shining stars?
I think Fedor is Daniel called him a once in a generation talent. At that time, I didn't agree because I didn't know who he was, and Daniel, this was a couple years ago. And I think he does a lot of stuff really, really well. And I think that Fedor could be around for a long, long time. He's someone who I think will stand the test of time if he decides to continue. He's already discovered that he can make a lot of money in business, or at least he's embarked in that arena. And we'll see if poker can hold his attention. There's two things. One, can you stand the test of time, which I think he will. And two, do you want to stand the test of time? And I think he's pretty young. And I think he may realize that his legacy will never be as a businessman. Too many people have made too many billions of dollars. Yes, it'll give you a comfortable, but if you want a legacy on this planet, then, when you have a chance to be the greatest of all time in a field, that's a pretty special thing. So he's on the right track. For me, he needs to prove himself. I don't respect the high rollers. I don't respect these tournaments that 25 people play all over the world. They play 40 of them a year. They travel all over the world. It's the same 25, 30 people. And they just all keep inching up the all-time money list. As you said, I'm 8th on the all-time money list. All right? That's bullshit. I mean, if you look at, the other thing is return on investment, right? I mean, some really smart people don't understand what that means, apparently. But that means maybe I invested $5 million or $4 million dollars, and I've cashed for $20 million. Whereas some of these guys have invested $20 million and have cashed for $24 million. I mean, there's a big difference. I mean, I had to work my ass off in 1K buy-in tournaments, 5K buy-in tournaments. That coming into, I think it was 2010, I'd never cashed more than $750,000, and I was number one on the all-time money list. So those artificial numbers don't impress me. The players in those tournaments don't impress me. Now, you asked me about Fedor, and I said he will stand the test of time. And there's one or two other guys. I mean, I have a lot of respect for what, is it Dom?
Dominic Nietzsche?
What's that? Yeah, Nietzsche,
Dominic
yeah.
Nietzsche.
Dominic Nietzsche, yeah. We call him Dom, but Dominic Nietzsche, I have a lot of respect. He has 4 Hold'em bracelets. Who guess where that places him on the all-time Hold'em bracelet list? Number 2.
Yeah.
So that I respect. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, I have 11 bracelets in Hold'em, and I have 12 bracelets in Hold'em, and he has 4. And so, that's a big number. And so I think that, he has a chance to be a great, great, great player, and he's a powerful player. So I think that he'll be around for a while. I think that Fedor will be around for a while. Stefan Sondheim, I think he has a lot of talent, and I think he will probably stand the test of time. I would say that Rainier is a really good player too. I like the way he moves his chips. Some of these guys have very similar styles to me, and there's 4 or 5 Americans
Chris
that
Ferguson
will stand the
won
test of time.
2017 WSOP Player of the Year. How do you feel about Chris, his achievement, and the negative response by many in the poker world to his return and now triumphant return?
Well, I'm kind of pissed off at those. I'm pissed off at those other people. Okay, I mean, first of all, it's a very, very, very small minority of players that attacks Chris Ferguson. It's just that, when Chris walks around, I think he lives in Phoenix, Arizona. When he walks around, the public still shouts his name, Chris Jesus Ferguson. Public doesn't know any of this. So it's a very small percentage of the poker world that somehow is condemning him. For what exactly? Why is he being condemned? He feels he's so innocent, he doesn't even owe an apology. And so, here's an authentic guy who was never in it for the money. This guy was making, $2 million a month? He was living in his girlfriend's apartment. He was bragging to me because he spent $25,000 on a car. He wasn't in this for the money. And now everybody's making him into something that he wasn't, something that he isn't. Even when I defend him, there's a haters, maybe 20 or 30 people just seem to really hate him. It's a very small minority. And, and you just got a bunch of haters. Well, haters are haters, man. They're gonna, like, whatever you do, there's haters. And I'm just like, I don't respect haters. I would like to teach the haters some positivity. I would like to teach the haters, how to get rid of hate in their life, I mean, and I'm going to sell millions of copies of this book, and I'm going to help millions of people get rid of hate. And, so I don't respect them. And so what is Chris Ferguson's crime? Tell me, Dara, what's his crime? What did he do wrong?
Yeah, I think a lot of the problem is that people don't really know exactly what happened, and he's just the most public face, I guess. And Howard made some attempt to come out and talk about it, but
no, I mean, what's the worst case scenario? What do you think Chris could be guilty of? Come on, either one of you, give me the worst case scenario.
Hiring Ray Batar.
Okay, so he hired someone. All right, so I mean, what did he hire? He hired 200 people. So one of them was bad. Okay, so his crime is he hired someone who was, who may or may not have been bad. I'm not even saying Ray's bad. I don't know.
Sure.
But I mean, it was obviously never a Ponzi scheme. I mean, they wanted to take this company public. All the poker players laughed at the idea of Ponzi scheme immediately. Everyone knew that wasn't the case. I mean, they were trying to take this company public. So
okay,
what did he do wrong?
Okay, well, just to push back on what you're saying, and by the way, I think both Darren and I come from quite a balanced place on this one, unlike some of the haters as you described them. But at the same time, there is an amount of personal responsibility that was taken by Howard, I guess, when he came out and did the letter of files. There has been a deafening silence from Chris, who you've just said doesn't feel like he even owes anyone an apology. Well, why not speak in some fashion?
So if someone doesn't take personal responsibility and another guy doesn't talk enough, then people should just write hateful things about him the rest of their life?
No, I'm not suggesting that, but it did affect a lot of people's lives. There was a lot of poker players, friends of mine, who had most of their rolls sitting on full tilt, and it was a miserable time.
Right, and the government, everybody knew the government took $280 million away, so they couldn't pay. You know, Chris Ferguson surrendered $20 million of his own money to pay back the players. He obviously didn't do too much wrong, and obviously there's a group of haters that will, you know, I mean, I think because Daniel Negreanu seems to hate him for whatever reason. I mean, I don't even know Negreanu controls a lot of people, you know. I mean, maybe, you know, and maybe, I mean, when I saw the hateful stuff, when I sent a picture of Chris Ferguson and I out and welcome back to the poker world, there was a bunch of hate there. And I was wondering, is this just 5-6 guys? I mean, who are these guys? You know, are these fake media accounts? So I think it's absurd. I think that Chris eventually will come public with a bunch of stuff. And I think once people realize that he didn't do anything or didn't do much, I mean, when I say I don't even think he did anything. I mean, people were mad because the government didn't pay them back right away. They had rolls caught on his site. Well, the government confiscated $280 million. So what could he do? Lobby the government to give the $280 million to the players? And then, of course, that's exactly what the government eventually did. But anyway, enough of this. There's probably like the 10 haters that hate him are probably going to attack me again after watching this. But
just to bring things back onto a more positive note, a few years ago you came over to the Irish Open, and it was a really big deal, obviously, for people that you were in the country. And I was actually at your table late on day one, but you were very jet lagged. I think you'd gone to take a nap, and then you came in. So I'm not sure how much you remember about it. But do you have any strong memories of your trip to Ireland?
First of all, I loved it. First of all, I'm half Irish. My mom's 100% Irish. So it was my second trip to Ireland, by the way. And I think I've been there 3 times now to Ireland. But anyway, I loved it there. I love Ireland. It's just like, I mean, it's just a beautiful country. And I do remember that trip. I went to the Guinness factory by myself. I do remember I had kings, and one of the Irish guys had ace queen offsuit, and we put all the money in, and they hit an ace. And I probably had some kind of meltdown at that point. I was super jet lagged. And I've been to Europe once in 2 years, and I did win the main event in 2012 in Europe in Cannes. That was an amazing moment for me, and I've had a lot of deep runs there. But man, just battling the jet lag, I'm just like, it's just hard. Someone was saying, "Hey, Phil, if you get an offer for $120,000 to go to China, would you take it?" And I'm like, "Oh God, the jet lag, probably have to take that." But the point is, well, that sounded too cocky.
Not after you rake in that 21 million from the positivity book.
Sounded way too cocky. People making $50,000 a year say, "Phil, what an asshole." I apologize. What I'm saying is that it's just really tough to. Jet lag's really brutal if you're going to be playing in poker tournaments, and it's a lot worse when you head towards Europe. So, so I do remember that. I had a fun time. Actually enjoyed myself that trip a lot. I walked around Ireland. I walked around Dublin quite a bit. The most remarkable thing to me was it was a Sunday night at 11 p.m. Now, of course, a Sunday night at 11 p.m. in the States, you go to a local pub, there's nobody in it or it's closed, right? It's a Sunday night, but in Ireland, 11, that place was full. Yeah. And I had a couple pints myself of Guinness that night. So
yeah, it's a wonderful festival. Well, finally, Phil, my final question, it's a little bit of an indulgent one from me, so please forgive me a bit of a preamble and the length of it. A few years ago, I wrote a feature film set in the world of poker, and one of the major challenges I faced was making the playing of a poker hand both realistic and cinematic. The way I got round that was to base scenes on real televised hands that I'd seen, but also to kind of conjure classic non-poker movie scenes to which they were sort of analogous. One of these scenes was based on a hand you played at the 2007 WSOP on your way to a then record 11th bracelet. I can't remember the name of the guy you were up against, But I do very clearly remember there were 2 tables left. You raised and got 3-bet by a guy who had about 30 bigs and position. You flatted his 3-bet, and the flop came down something small. I'm going to think like 7, 5 deuce, rainbow, something like that. You led for 2/3 pot, a lead out I didn't expect you to make. And just as he was loading up a shove, he was kind of fingering his chips. You said to him, "I know what you've got." And he stopped handling his chips all of a sudden and looked at you. And you continued, you said, "You've got ace king. The problem is I've got a pocket pair. So if you go all in, I have to call." Now, maybe you get lucky, you hit your ace or king, but I know I'm winning right now, so I will call. And I remember the guy just shook his head, folded, showed ace king. And I remember thinking that you were Dirty Harry in that famous scene where Clint Eastwood stands over the robber, pointing the gun, and he says, "I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 5 or did he fire 6? You've got to ask yourself the question, do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? So finally, my question for you is, what is your... You had 3s. I knew you would remember as well. So finally, my question, what's your favourite poker movie? Do you think any poker film has successfully done justice to or captured the drama of a poker hand well? And who would play you in the movie White Magic, the Phil Hellmuth story?
Yeah, so we had a script in Hollywood about my life called The Madison Kid. And they started paying me in 2002 for this script. And so I've collected, I don't know, 150,000, whatever. They've made payments and payments and payments and payments. And Ashton Kutcher was attached to play me. But this was in 2002.
Right.
And then in 2007, I thought it was going to be made. Because when you need to make a movie, there's 44 hurdles you need to clear. You have to get distribution. You have to get a place to shoot it. They solved everything. This movie was going to be made, and they went to Hayden Christensen. And Hayden had just...
was around Star Wars, was it?
Correct. It was the last Star Wars, I think, in 2007 maybe. And so I was so excited. I said, this thing's going to get made. And instead, he decided to do the movie Jumper. So we were this close. All we needed to do was say yes. We sent the director, who ended up doing Steps, ended up doing a bunch of movies and became a super successful director. But he really wanted to do this project. And at the time, he was kind of a rookie director. And he's done the ones with the musical ones where they dance a little bit on, where the cheerleader movies, and he's been super successful there, and I'm happy for him. But all Hayden had to do was say yes, and it was going to be made. And so they've come to me and said, "Hey, do you want to do an ESPN movie once a year?" And I just say no. I'm going to hold out. I want the big movie made, and I want it to be on screen. And so, so Hayden, I think, would have probably done a pretty good job. Ashton Kutcher in the day would have done a good job. But we need somebody who plays me. The script ends when I'm 24. So we need somebody young who we think is very talented. I think that movie's eventually going to happen. Now, as far as my favorite poker movie goes, probably Rounders. I just, and I remember Matt and Edward coming out to Vegas and partying with me right before the launch and playing in the main event. And then one last comment about doing hands right. So I went on the show Billions. Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Billions was like, I don't know, it's one of the top 10 shows in the world. It's super hot and climbing, and a great show. And so I went on set, and they wanted to hire me as a charity poker tournament MC. And I'm like, okay, that's what it's come to. I've raised $50 million emceeing charity poker tournaments. I've done 100. Do one for President Clinton, do one for Tiger Woods, do one for Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, do one for a program called Teaching Tolerance for the Holocaust Museum. So I've done all of these charity events, and it's raised $50 million. So now Billions wants me, not as a poker player, but as a charity poker MC. And, of course, it was Brian Koppelman and David Levin's show, and, of course, they wrote Rounders. So I went on set, and I have the microphone, and they're doing a hand right in front of me, and all the stars are there. And I'm like, stop, hold it. All the stars are there, and there's a whole, it's just filled with 200 people. And I just stopped the whole production just on a dime. And the director comes running out, "Phil, what's going on?" And I'm like, well, I'm just going to save us all a lot of time because that doesn't work. You're going to have to reshoot it doing it exactly this way. And then, and then they're like, oh, yeah, that's right, Phil. So I'm kind of like there. But in the background, I hear Malin Ackerman, like the supermodel, say, who the hell is that guy? But just whispering it. No one else is talking. And I take my mic and I walk right over. And I say, I'm Phil Hellmuth. And she smiles. She doesn't know what to do. Smiles, shakes my hand, and I said, that's right, I'm a baller. I'm just messing around. I said, I'm taking over this thing today. And she just started laughing, and everybody started laughing.
Well, it remains for me to say, Phil Hellmuth, it has been a boon for us to have you on the show. You are a poker idol and a gentleman. I really appreciate you sharing your personal thoughts and anecdotes about aspects of your life, and I'm sure our audience appreciates that too. Thank you so much for joining us on the chip race.
All right, great to be on, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
See you later. Good luck, everybody.